democracy is a super good thing and it's the best thing ever. You're told that from a very young age, which makes you miss like the underlying point that freedom is more important.
The lack of separation of money and state is what causes the issues that we see in the world today, and that there is no fix other than the separation of money and state.
Bitcoin is the remedy to the poison that is the US dollar. That's what it is. Pandora's box is open. We'll just have to see what happens.
It's almost like if you pictured everybody in the world, everyone's a compass, and they're constantly like changing direction. Bitcoin just aligns everybody.
The future is here already. It's just not evenly dispersed. And when we're on a Bitcoin standard, we have 8 billion people working for 8 billion people. Mind-blowing.
It is the world's first global free market. We're all operating in our own self-interest for the benefit of everybody else.
Joe, welcome to the Bitcoin Infinity Show. Nice to have you here.
Well, thank you, Knut. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Oh, well, you've had quite a quick rise to superstardom in the Bitcoin space here after the release of a video called "What's the Problem" around a month ago, I believe. Is that correct?
Yeah, it was only on the 7th of January. I mean, it feels like a lifetime ago now.
Yeah,
7 weeks later.
Yeah, things move fast here. So we're going to talk a bit about that video and a bunch of other stuff. But first off, let our listeners know who you are, please. So can you do a TLDR on Joe Bryan?
Yeah, sure. Well, I've been in the Bitcoin space for a little while, but like most people, in the background, there's. I think as a community, we have a sort of personality skew where most people are happy not being in the spotlight, as well as what potentially draws people to this particular area of interest as well. It's sort of that combination means that a lot of people just are observers rather than anything else. But my background was physics at university, and then I became an equity derivatives trader for about 10 years. Obviously from the UK, but from the north of England in the UK. But I live close to London now. I met my wife down here, and we live very close to where she was, where she grew up. So, like a lot of people, I guess. And after working as an equity derivatives trader for 10 years, I started modeling sports from a mathematical perspective, just for initially as a bit of interest. And that sort of spiraled into realizing I was actually reasonably good at doing it and could do it better than the bookmakers could at the time, and therefore left the city to move into sports betting effectively, and spent my time modeling sports mathematically, creating algorithms to trade them, and then together with a partner, we built a quant engineering business, which like automated trading systems and pricing and new product creation for bookmakers to bring new and interesting products to their customers. And we were acquired after a couple of years, and then I've spent the last 5-6 years helping to grow that acquiring business into a global business today. And
whoa.
Yeah, it's probably not your typical background coming.
No, but it's mega brain stuff, right? Like this is the quants.
No.
That's like, I mean, this is not something your average Joe, pardon the pun, could have come up with.
I think it's like anything. Anything looks hard from the outside if you've no experience in doing it, right?
Yeah.
And so, it was a natural build on what I had done before from an educational perspective, and then from a work perspective, because a lot of the maths I was using and the ways of thinking about things and the ways of risk managing were, had a lot of strong parallels with the maths underlying derivatives, and then ultimately with physics. And so there were mental leaps required to unlock certain things, but it's built on foundations which are shared by many thousands of people.
All right, and I mean that's the real trick, right? Because as you say, everything is easy when you know it's like when you know how to do something, it's easy to do it. Like very few things are difficult. I mean, there are exceptions. Like some things are still difficult, even though you know how to do them, and you can always improve certain skills. But still, I think that's also part of why people can't really why it's so hard to communicate something that that others don't, right? Because it's hard to, once you know how to ride a bike, for instance, it's or play the guitar is one of my favorite examples, because I know how to do that, but most people don't.
That's so hard.
Like and it's to me it's like, why can't you do that? Like it's like not knowing English. I'm like, how come you don't know English? Like, how can you get around in life if you don't know English? Like, it's hard to put yourself in the shoes of someone who doesn't have a skill that you have.
Especially when it becomes almost intuitive.
Yes,
like when you yourself can no longer explain how you got from A to B.
No, and for me, like Bitcoin is like, so it's obvious. No one can tamper with the supply. That's why it's superior. It's obvious that it's superior. And for me, with libertarianism as well, it's like super easy. Like, of course, we should all be ANCAPs, because voluntary interactions are better than involuntary one. People make better decisions when they don't have a gun to their head. Like, it's super simple.
Of course,
but most people don't see that.
But I bet you yourself didn't see that.
No, it took 40 years to figure it out, and because you have to relearn so much that you took for granted, because your old worldview is so sort of stuck in these patterns that it has to be a certain way. Democracy is a super good thing and it's the best thing ever. Like you're told that from a very young age, which makes you miss like the underlying point that freedom is more important. Like if we had less forceful interactions, we would be even better off. Or money, you're sort of taught not to question it, if that makes sense. Like it's just a thing that exists and nobody questions, but obviously it's man-made. So like how do we keep it in check? Like these are questions that most people don't ask themselves.
Yeah, it's first principles thinking.
Yes.
And it's very much like science as well. Like when you go to school and you're taught about how something works, in order for someone to have explained how something works, it presupposes a chain of thinking under that to get to the point of explaining something else.
Yeah.
Because, explaining how a rocket works depends, on understanding gravity and propulsion and all of these different things.
Mathematics,
and maths and physics. Ultimately, some of those things are discoverable and provable.
All of them, I would say. Like the more basic the science, the more discoverable they are. Like whereas something when it goes into like gender theory or social studies or state economics or religion, like then they're not discoverable. You have to come up with parts of it. Like,
well, I think the difference is science versus things that are not science.
Exactly. But are called sciences, like still.
Yeah, actual hard science. Hard science. If all knowledge was wiped out and we were forced to start again, science is something that you would inevitably get back to.
Yeah, this is the Ricky Gervais theorem, right?
Yeah, exactly. Well, I mean, there's no way of me explaining this better than Ricky Gervais explained.
No, but it's a great little saying of his, like one of my favorite Ricky Gervais bits, and I think that what we've forgotten is that the first principles thinking has to has to be the foundation of all of it. There's a great Hans Hermann Hoppe book called Economic Science and the Austrian Method, where he really goes into the epistemology and the methodology of this and why this is so important. Because, like, okay, empirical evidence is all nice and dandy, but if we don't have the first principles thinking behind it, then the very question of what ought we study is skewed by the economic incentives, and resources are misallocated, and everything gets fucked because we're studying stuff that we probably hadn't studied if it hadn't been for this skewed incentive structure behind it, which is why science is so fucked now, and like political correctness is all over it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the whole peer review system is, you end up, if you can't be sure that every brick in the wall is actually a solid brick, you can't build on top of it.
Hello there, fellow Bitcoiner. Take your coins off the exchange right now. You need to take self-custody of your coins. Now, how do you do that? First of all, you need a good hardware wallet, and I would recommend the Bitbox. So go to bitbox.swiss/infinity and get your Bitbox now with a discount. Also, you need somewhere to store your seed phrase. So why not get one of those wonderful steel seed plate storage thingies from stampseed.com/infinity, and you can get the everything divided seed plate. It's beautiful. Also, if you're advanced and if you want to start with generational wealthing, which is a fun hobby I have, you can go to the Bitcoin Advisor group of lovely fellows from down under that can help you store your Bitcoin for a long time using multi-sig solutions. So check out Bitbox, Stampseed, and the Bitcoin Advisor, or GFY. Back to the show. Another thing from that book that I just have to, while it's on my mind, I know I should let you talk, but I love this.
I'm enjoying this.
Yeah. There's he's saying that the claim of the empiricist. The strict empiricist is that we cannot know anything to 100%. I saw Lawrence Krauss say this live on Hitchmas, where they celebrate the memory of Christopher Hitchens. So I saw a physicist say this live, and that statement in itself, this is so wonderful, because Hoppe argues that statement in itself is an empiricist statement. It's an absolutist statement. Because if you say that you can, with 100% accuracy, say that we cannot know anything with 100% accuracy, then you're falsifying yourself.
Yeah. Very good.
So, and I absolutely love that, and that's why I fell so hard down the Austrian economics rabbit hole. I think because I grew up thinking that, like, the social sciences were sort of bullshitty, and that mathematics is a hard science, as you say, and physics is a hard science. But I've realized that you can have as hard a science on the subjective side as you can on the objective side of things. And this is Austrian economics. This is what it is. It's like something you cannot argue with.
No, absolutely. It's human action in motion, but it's what happens when you have incentives.
Yeah,
and it is a logical system. It's not. Yes. It's an action-driven logical system. If this, then this, then this, then this, then this.
Exactly. It's like a giant Excel sheet. I'm in heaven.
Yeah. It's what it's not doing. What it's not doing is taking an observable.
No.
And then saying, well, this came from X.
No,
it's like, well, that becomes subjective. If you start from zero and you build it up brick by brick, and you are, if it's a logical impossibility that any of those bricks is wrong, then you have solid foundations for building a tremendously big building on top of that.
Yes, and it's just like 1 + 1 = 2 is because we define what 2 is by 1 + 1, literally.
Yes.
So you cannot argue against that. And in the same way, you can't argue against the law of diminishing marginal utility. Like, one extra unit will not give you more utility. Like it cannot, if the good is homogeneous. And how do you define a homogeneous good? well, that's subjective. That's up to you. But if it is in your mind just an extra unit of not something, it's not worth as much as the previous one. It cannot be. And the same of a time preference. Why negative interest rates are impossible and stuff, like how you can actually prove these things pretty easily by building brick by brick from first principles. And I just love that kind of thinking. Like it's taken over completely. Like, and you see the world through a different lens. Like when you discover that this is like the correct way of approaching life, even.
Absolutely, and unfortunately, the vast majority of the world is starting from starting from the wrong end because of what they've been taught, and then you take all the building blocks for granted, and then where you think the wall is solid, but actually the foundations are just sand. It's entirely sand. But this is what I think is like the biggest pushback I've had, Knut, around the video, has been from people who are just so indoctrinated in the existing system.
Yeah.
That they, even though they can't point out a logical flaw in the sequence of thinking and that they go through in the video, they attack it from a consequences basis.
Yeah.
And it's largely around the need for inflation.
Yeah, everyone thinks
really what it
natural.
comes down to. It's like, well, surely, if we had this world, that would be terrible for everyone because prices would go down. Like no one would spend any money, and no one would invest, and everything would collapse. And
which is simply not true.
Which is simply not true. It is more true if you are starting from a position where you have huge amounts of leverage, and then you go to a system like that, and then the leverage just implodes because it's an unnatural outcome that would not have occurred if you'd been building on the solid foundations.
No.
And so, I think that's like a real mental challenge they have with this. They can agree with the first principles build up, but they can't agree with, given where we are now, that we could do that. And it's almost like it's viewed as an on-off switch. And it's not. It's not an on-off switch for everyone. It's going to be a gradual move to this new world. And those who recognize that for what it is and employ that logical thinking, critical thinking, will move sooner and will see the benefit of it. And ultimately, the people who hold on to the existing system for as long as possible are going to be the ones that are worse off as a result of that. But the switch is inevitable because it's a unilateral option for everybody.
Yeah, and and this is not the first time that happens. Like every time there's innovation, that same thing plays out in a way.
Exactly.
It's just pushing hindering the inevitable. Like for instance, we're doing this now. So instead of watching TV and state-run TV channels, when I grew up, there were 2 state-run TV channels and 3 state-run radio channels in Sweden, and that was it.
Don't worry, Knut. I've got it on the other screen, so I can still watch the state TV.
You can watch the BBC, courtesy of USAID. Like, but this is the thing. Like, we are doing things voluntarily and all the time, and everyone is doing it to a certain extent. And as technology progresses, we do get our capabilities of doing that and doing more and more things just voluntarily increase because we have more time. And are you familiar with a phenomenon called Jevons paradox?
I've heard of it, but I couldn't tell you what it was. If you could remind me.
So if I got it right, like Lynn Alden has, like always, a perfect explanation of it, and mine is flawed. But the thing is, it debunks this whole thing that when prices go down, people stop consuming, because it's simply not true. People, on the contrary, people make more use of the cheaper stuff. And the perfect example of this, empirical example, which you shouldn't use in economics, but still, if you would, I would use like computer memory, like computer storage, which has Moore's law has made that vastly the deflation in that technology is so much faster than the inflation in the money. They even the money printers can't keep up. So computer storage is getting like hardware. It's getting cheaper and cheaper faster than the money printers can keep up with. And what happens? Do people stop buying computers? On the contrary, they buy a new computer more often now than they did in the 80s, like a lot more often. Like it goes faster and faster. So it's not a problem at all with dropping prices. It's just good for absolutely everyone, especially the poor. And it's completely obvious when you think about it.
Of course it is. Of course it is. But it shows the degree to which people have been brainwashed to think about things as, you have to be growing. And you say, well, what does that growth mean? Oh, it's growth in GDP. It's like, well, what does that really mean? What does it doesn't really mean anything.
No.
And it's growth in GDP that's being debased as well.
No.
in the currency it's measured in. And then you fiddle the system because it's being debased at a rate which is different from what you class as the real inflation. So when you say real GDP, it's meaningless as well. And so it's like everybody's the foundations from which they critique logical and critical thinking and Austrian economics are just so shaky, but they don't realize they're shaky. And but when you sit somebody down and you go through it, they can't argue. They can't argue with the logical conclusions, and then you can just see their brain exploding because it's like, how can these two things both be true?
Yeah. Unfortunately, the logic does not apply to some people. Like they just don't listen to it. And I mean, GDP, depression medicine is in GDP numbers. Like weapons of mass destruction are in GDP numbers. If you sell more of those, your GDP goes up. So like, and they print money on top of that.
Yeah.
So back to the movie, like where that was what we were supposed to be talking about here. And
we could talk about anything.
No, but I love this because this is the foundations. This is why I love the movie so much. Or if you can call it a movie, is it a movie? Is it a video? What?
Probably more of a video than a movie. But 39 minutes is still quite long in this day and age.
Yeah, it's I'd like to call it something more generous than just a piece of content. But whenever I stumble upon a piece of content that I really like, that explain these basic things so well, then I instantly share it, and I'm very happy that it's out there. And I really liked seeing yours spread as fast as it did and get all the translations going and all the stuff, which is so fast now with the AI stuff. And so
well, thank you very much. I mean, we have we've not. I mean, the translations wise, we're now at 36 native languages on YouTube, and this is and there's no AI in that.
Okay. It's fantastic.
This is all Bitcoiners around the world putting their hand up and saying, let me do the translations. It's incredible. It's just incredible. And so thank you for sharing it and giving it support, because it did get through the community pretty quickly, and hopefully at some point it will begin to go beyond that as well.
So can you give us a little overview of what the video is, and then go into what made you do this, and what made you like the production value is great. So like what's the story behind the video, and what is it about for those who don't know?
For those that don't know, and we'll hopefully pop I'll pop a link in the replies to this when it goes out.
We'll put it in the show notes.
Yeah. It's a story about a faraway island, and it's make believe. and there are nice Pixar characters and things which make it a little bit more accessible and soft. But it's the creation of two different monetary systems that arrive on an island. Both halves of the island initially have perfect money, but one has a big red button. And Fiatello is the guy who runs that side of the island, and he can press the button whenever he wants to change a characteristic of perfect money. But of course, he promises never to do that. And then eventually, human nature being human nature, he ends up pressing it, and then things spiral out of control. And what we see is a build-up from first principles thinking, from people on an island with nothing, to the creation of the free market, what that then means about prices and quality of life, to then a deterioration as he begins to change the core aspects of perfect money, where the deterioration ends up looking like today, with all of the problems that we see around us today. And so helps the viewer understand where today's issues have come from very clearly, without
it becomes clown world, right?
Yeah, but without it being a lecture, because at every stage the viewer themselves is going through those logical steps, and it's nodding along saying, yeah, that makes sense, I agree with that, that's logical. And then they end up in today, and then you have this aha moment. And if you're a Bitcoiner, there's not going to be anything in the video that you didn't know already. But the way it's delivered is different, a different approach than we would normally take. But it's most impactful for people who have not been able to make those connections before. And so very quickly, within half an hour, they can go from understanding that the lack of separation of money and state is what causes the issues that we see in the world today, and that there is no fix other than the separation of money and state. And so the reason I created, I didn't intend to create a video. I was forced to make a presentation for some friends because I was invited by a friend to a weekend away with a bunch of his friends. And he asked everyone, it was like a weekend where it's like co-created. Everybody brings something to talk about. And then, over the course of the weekend, you'll have like 15 half-hour chats, and you'll do some exercise, and you'll, have a nice social as well. And so for the very first time, I was forced to articulate what was in my head. But I didn't know anyone else that was going, and so I couldn't assume anything about anybody else. And so instead of trying to just explain Bitcoin in 30 minutes, I tried to get people to the point of wanting to learn about Bitcoin after 30 minutes. And so it's a Bitcoin presentation that doesn't talk about Bitcoin until right at the end. But then giving the presentation to them, I realized it was actually quite a powerful thing, because the number of questions, the amount of engagement I then had from these people who had aha moments watching this. And one of the guys was Lebanese, and at the end of the presentation, he was like, oh my god, this is exactly what happened. And I didn't realize that before. I hadn't been able to connect all the dots, and he's now gone super deep down the rabbit hole.
Of course.
Yeah. He's not coming out. And then so they encouraged me, like, you should try and share this more broadly. But unlike you, I've never put myself out there. And so, I discussed it with my wife, and I said, like, if I'm going to make a video, it's going to live forever on the internet. I've got to be not embarrassed about it.
Yeah.
And so decided to spend a bit of money and do it properly with a video production company. And they were fantastic. And, I'm really happy with the outcome. But I'm so naive in doing it. I'd create the slides and just rock up at the production company and then just ad lib what I was going to say.
Well, it's great. Like, and I mean, I bet you enjoyed doing it, like or making it, and I bet you do enjoy the attention afterwards. Like
it's it's really strange. It's really strange.
It is
because I love talking about Bitcoin, and so the fact that more people want to talk to me about Bitcoin after making the film is like every day is Christmas. It's great, but it's also strange that Bitcoiners would know who I am before we've been introduced.
Oh, tell me about it. Like I'm still trying to get used to it, and it's a weird thing being recognized all of a sudden, especially when like I'm. The Everything Divided meme, it took off during COVID, so I hadn't really experienced any of the
you were shielded from the physical aspect.
Yeah, and then I went to Miami like afterwards, and people recognized me on the street in Miami Beach, and I'm like, what the hell is going on? Like, I've never experienced anything like it, and but yeah, it takes some getting used to, but and I think like you should never forget that what appreciation is like that, and I'm super grateful every time I get to sign a book or say hi to a person that wants to say hi to me. I'm still like, I'm just feel super blessed to be in a position like that, and so, yeah,
I agree with those sentiments completely. It's so nice when somebody. I've had so many messages from people around the world. The fact that we've had people from 36 languages come forward and want to translate, it shows you like how far and wide like the video's gone. And it's funny, our biggest, because I see the statistics on YouTube, and our biggest subtitles category is Korean. Out of all of them, like, well, this is lots of Korean people are watching this. This is amazing. And so I've had messages from people all around the world, and it's just so nice. Every day I'll get a message from someone and say like, I shared this with my family. They now understand. They want to buy their first Bitcoin or first few sats and stuff like that. So it's really nice. You must have had the same with the book, where something you've created has helped somebody.
Yeah,
and there's no. I don't think there can't be a better feeling than that.
No, because what it is just a whole bucket load of love coming your way, and it's great.
Yes.
Like, but it's like I heard who was that? Josh Homme of Queens of the Stone Age say that with about songwriting, but I think it applies to anything creative, really. Like if a fisherman happens to stumble on a really beautiful fish, it's the fish that is beautiful and not the fisherman. So what you should take pride in is the thing that you found or the thing that you created or whatever you may call it. So be proud of that, but detach it from your person, because it's easily becomes an ego thing, and you don't want to go there.
Absolutely. I think one of the nice things about being in Bitcoin is you've had to dismantle your ego to get to the starting line. And then you just got to not let it build up again.
But you don't seem like a guy that has an ego problem at all. Like,
that's nice
rather the opposite.
That's nice of you to say. And
you would win the humbleness competition.
Well, I mean, I think stating that is like your example before. It becomes a self-defeating statement if you if you say that.
I'm the humblest.
I am the humblest. Yeah. But what I was going to say is that's a really good analogy about the fish and the fisherman, because what I want to do with this content is make it available to everybody. Like it's the fish that is beautiful, and we should make sure everyone in the world gets to see the fish.
Yes, because this is one hell of a fish, right?
Yeah, and everybody can have the fish.
Yes.
So
That's the beauty of informational fish.
Yes,
It's copyable.
Yeah, but more explicitly than that, it's open on a Creative Commons non-commercial license now.
Oh, great!
If you go to the website, so obviously the video lives on YouTube.
Yeah.
And throughout X, as a native upload in various places, but it's also embedded on the website, which is satsversusfiat.com, satsvsfiat.com.
Mm-hmm.
And on there, you can access all the materials. So, so we've had all these volunteers from around the world who have now helped us translate the subtitles, native subtitles on YouTube. But also now we've open sourced the presentation, all the slides themselves, the speaker notes and the transcripts. We've done it in English, and then we've got another 9 languages live at the moment. There's another 6 that will land by the early next week. And so hopefully we get it in all 36 languages. And the list is still growing because there's adding more to YouTube. And so everybody around the world is welcome to take these slides, take this presentation, remix it, go and do it themselves to their friends or their family or their colleagues or whoever for free. As long as you're not charging for it, go ahead and go crazy with it. And we've set up a small community on X as well, so people can join it. And the community is the Sats versus Fiat community. And, every day, every few days, we're having people post photos. Like, so for example, yesterday or 2 days ago, we had a showing in Brazil. We had 100 people in Malta. A couple of the guys had put on an event and did the presentation for people live in Malta. And we've had live showings of the video in loads of different places. And it's like, it's great. This is something for everybody. And if everyone in the world could see the video, we take a big step forward to where ultimately we all know, you and I both know where we're going to end up anyway. It just helps accelerate it.
Yeah. It's a trajectory. I don't think will ever rid humanity of all involuntary transactions. That's just not physically possible. But it's the right, regardless of how small the state is, it can always grow smaller. The correct fight is always to make it smaller and separate money even further from it. I think that's a way to look at it. Hello there. I'm Knut Svanholm, and I'm an international village idiot and author. These are my books on Bitcoin. Bitcoin Sovereignty Through Mathematics, Bitcoin Independence Reimagined, Bitcoin Everything Divided by 21 Million, and Bitcoin The Inverse of Clown World. These are now re-edited, redesigned, and available from the Bitcoin Infinity Store. I mean, look at that. Look at how your collection could look. It's upside down, but there they are anyway. But more than that, all of these books will be released for free, chapter by chapter, week by week on Noster. Also accompanied by a video that Luke and I will make talking about the ideas in the book, where we answer your questions, because you can sign up for the Bitcoin Infinity Academy and join courses for each and every one of the books and talk to us every now and then and get other perks, like a free set of steak knives. So go to the Bitcoin Infinity Store right now, get the books, sign up for the Academy.
Have you ever known a Bitcoiner who wanted to grow the size of the state?
Oh, I've known a few that have had some cognitive dissonances. They wouldn't put it like that, but the arguments they make for using tax money for this or that would inevitably lead to an enlargement of the state. It's just that they don't see it because they don't use first principles when attacking the problem. Yeah. That's the way I see it. So the way I see it, the only way that makes sense is if you have a cognitive dissonance involved somewhere.
Which hopefully gets resolved. It hopefully gets resolved.
Yeah.
So the natural outcome is that once you become a Bitcoiner with no cognitive dissonance, you inevitably want less involvement from the government. in the money. Right?
Yeah, I think so. I think there's no.
I mean, that sounds like an obvious statement, but then if you then play it forward, and once everybody in the world, or the majority, or even a small minority, or a larger minority of the world find Bitcoin, then that's going to happen naturally.
Yeah.
Because when everybody thinks like we do, nobody is pushing for a bigger government, and the default becomes shrinking it again.
Yeah. And I think there's not only cognitive dissonance, perhaps, but maybe some like people who are able to still leverage the fiat system in order to enlarge their stacks. And I include like peak fiat, which is crypto, like in shitcoins and stuff. If people who are scrupulous and don't care if they fuck other people over can acquire larger and larger Bitcoin stacks by leveraging whatever position they have in fiat land. And which is why which in turn can lead people to say positive things about strategic Bitcoin reserves and stuff like that. That really has no like, and saying that the dollar and Bitcoin can coexist. That they can for a short while, but in the end, Bitcoin is the remedy to the poison that is the US dollar. That's what it is. Like you can't have both. Like
in the long run, I totally agree with you.
Yeah,
I think the long run is a long time. There's a long time for.
Unfortunately, yes, because I want hyper Bitcoinization to happen as quickly as possible. A lot of people say that it will be chaotic if it happens too fast, but I think like it is chaotic already, and that kind of chaos, it comes from the decline of fiat, not from Bitcoin being awesome. So like Bitcoin replacing fiat just solves the problems quicker. It is the solution. Like you're not. It is the solution to like most people are living with a gun to their head at the moment. We're at war, if you will. Like the Great War never ended. Like First World War, it was a war between governments and their subjects, and it's still ongoing from a certain perspective. Of course, I mean it's peaceful in the way that we don't kill each other as much as they did back then, but still. If we could remove the threats of violence, that would be an obviously a good thing. If we made violence less profitable, and that's exactly what Bitcoin does, and that's what the aspect of it I love the most. I think.
Yeah, that's a very nice way of putting it. I think what's ultimately going to be the driver of the death of fiat is fiat.
Yeah.
Because what's inevitably going to happen is that people find ways to weaponize fiat to increase the amount of Bitcoin they have.
Yeah, yeah.
But they do that from being within the fiat system.
Yeah,
and it's that failure of fiat relative to Bitcoin which will create its own demise.
Yes. Fiat cannot not commit suicide. Like it's impossible. Yeah. It's mathematically impossible.
It is mathematically
because
impossible.
the debt is bigger than the pile of assets, and when it is like the interest that is then also conjured out of thin air that has to pay off you have to pay off the interest on the debt, and that makes the debt even bigger. Yeah. And which means that all fiat currencies hockey stick after a while, and everything. Inflation is just hyperinflation in slow motion. Like we haven't, you haven't just hit that part of the curve yet, but it is the same phenomenon.
I totally agree. I gave a presentation a couple of days ago, which I hope may be able to be released, but we'll see. Where I think he will enjoy it. If it gets released, I will send it to you, and
I'm
you can watch
sure
it.
I will.
You will enjoy it, given that last comment.
Yeah. No, it's great, and I love to see new voices come up in the Bitcoin space that because we're all like communicating basically the same things, but from slightly different angles and from slightly different viewpoints. And yours is like, sure, it's first principles thinking, but it's made for non-first principles thinking people, and that's what I like so much about it.
That's a good way of describing it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really wanted to make it accessible to everybody, and we've had children watch it. We've had elderly people who are not tech savvy or financial savvy watch it, and just the outcome is the same.
Yeah,
it's the same. Like it doesn't. I feel like I could have chosen wording slightly better in several places, but that's not having a script. But I think it doesn't lose many people along the way. Like there's not many sharp edges, either politically or from a language choice perspective, that are beyond the extent to which people have natural exposure through their lives.
And perfection is the enemy of momentum when it comes to creativity. Like if you can always polish something a little bit further, but you have to let go at some point. It's good to have deadlines and like let the things. Once you release something like this, it starts living its own life, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, I have regrets about the Everything Divided video, for instance. There's a couple of errors in it. When it's the 6 properties of money, I say the 7 properties of money because I had just read the Eric Jakes book, I think.
Well,
and stuff like that. And it begins with a sentence that repeats itself, and it's like, but still, it took off anyway. So what can you do? You just have to be happy about it in hindsight. I mean,
all we're doing here is, you're never going to be perfectly happy with everything, and
no,
it's enough to be directionally correct, I think. Because nothing, this video and your video and the next video and the video after that people create, is not going to be like the holy grail. It's not like, oh, like job's done.
No.
It's all finished now. It's like this constant series of improvements, and if it's just helping a new segment of people develop a more coherent mental model, they're not going to remember necessarily the words you chose at one particular point or other. You're just helping them on the journey to the next stop where they can put more meat on the bones.
And do you realize that what you said right now about videos and creative processes is entirely true for Bitcoin itself too? Because Bitcoin was never perfect, and it couldn't be perfect. It never needed to be perfect. It just needed to be good enough to last forever.
That's a hard needle to thread, though.
But it's true. Like the code isn't perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but it is good like it was obviously good enough because it's still here and it works and it's doing its thing, and as long as it does, it's unstoppable. It's going to change everything. Like, so yeah, the Pandora's box is open. We'll just have to see what happens.
Yeah, it is, and I mean, you'll have seen this already from your time in Bitcoin, but the degree to which the accessibility of this changes is accelerating.
Very much so.
And we are often, like, Bitcoin is like the Bitcoin ecosystem. The Bitcoin community is still very small, very, very small by global standards, but it's fact is bigger than what it was 5 years ago or 10 years ago. And but even Bitcoiners who are sort of much more adept at thinking about like exponential change, when it comes to Bitcoin, like, I don't think we necessarily fully appreciate the extent to which the exponential effect is also across humans. And this bubble is gonna, I realize that using the word bubble is potentially misconstrued, but the Bitcoin bubble, as in the number of people it touches and the number of people who have effectively walked through the door, I know it is just beginning to rapidly expand.
The Metcalfe's law of it all
Yes. But
because
from a human perspective.
Yeah, but that is based on humans because it's about communications and network effects, right?
Nodes in a network.
But here you have a Metcalfe's law on steroids, if you will, because Bitcoin itself becomes more valuable as a communications network because of Metcalfe's law. But that says nothing about number go up, which is a completely different effect, which also fuels the Metcalfe's law. So it's like it's so powerful. And you say, as you say, the community is still small, and I see this because I travel a lot, as you know. Like my life has completely changed because of this thing, of course. But and I try to go to as many conferences and meetups and stuff as I can, and just spread the gospel, a skeptic's gospel. And the thing I've seen is that yes, the community is small everywhere, but it is everywhere. Yeah. I mean, you can find more than a handful. You can probably find 50 Bitcoiners at least. It's not very hard to find them if you know where to look, like Orange Pill app or some Telegram group for a meetup or whatever you prefer as or Twitter or Nostr or whatever, like whatever you prefer to use to find other Bitcoiners. But when you do, all the monetary problems go away, like all the fiat problems, because first of all, you can pay one another in Bitcoin, and you're all incentivized to help one another, because if you help the other guy, you help Bitcoin itself. And also, someone always has fiat. So if you go to a restaurant, for instance, and someone's out of fiat, that's no problem, because as long as you have sats, you can pay them. So it's super, super powerful.
It is. It's we get to see in those instances. So it's the future in a microcosm.
Exactly.
Yeah. But ultimately, it's going to affect everything.
Yeah.
But you see it even in an example there that you talked about, is that you end up supporting other people.
Yes.
And so it's almost like if you pictured everybody in the world as like this, everyone's a compass, and they're constantly like changing direction. Like Bitcoin just aligns everybody.
Yeah.
I mean, it aligns them from a decentralized perspective. It's like decentralized alignment.
Yeah.
And you know, so all these compasses.
Decentralized.
Yeah. All these compasses like moving direction, and then you get like one that's straight, and then the next one becomes straight, and it just spreads out.
Yeah.
But the impact of everyone becoming aligned can actually be super powerful, and I do think this is something that we perhaps underestimate as a community, because
totally
it's like the combination of individual efforts can be magnitudes over the sum of the parts.
Yeah, this is a lot of this is in the latest book, The Inverse of Clown World, because like the deeper I think about this and the more I think about it, the more mind blowing it becomes, because this very notion of you being incentivized to help other Bitcoiners because you're just you're the same phenomenon. And if you go deep down that rabbit hole, you realize that the Satoshis don't exist. It's just unspent transaction outputs and a number attached to them. The ability to move the Satoshis exist, but that ability exists solely in people's heads, because it's all about keeping a secret from other people. So everything in Bitcoin is probabilistic, right? The only reason you say that you own a Bitcoin is that you know a private key, and you know how low the probability that someone else also knows that private key is. So that it's not really ownership, and it's not even possession. It's just knowing a number. and also, like the reason we say that the 21 million is unbreakable is because we know that the probability that everyone will agree that changing it is a good idea is negligible. What's the word? Neglectable. So you are not only are we all Satoshi, we're all Satoshis. We are our Bitcoins. Like we are the thing. and which means that this thing that we're incentivized to help one another, it's true on a deep level, because we're now the same organism. So in a free market where you had sound money as gold as sound money, then you get free market competition, which is great because prices fall and people compete, and the best product, the best idea wins. Yeah. Which is why everything is now in a smartphone. So even with crappy money, the free market made this happen. Like we turned sand into this, where we can have access to all the world's movies and books and music and information. It's just amazing. It is, yeah. You can, the Google Earth is in 3D on this. Like I'm amazed by it every day. But now we have something that is better than free market competition, because now the competition is still there, but we're incentivized to not compete but help. Like we can actually, we benefit from another Bitcoin company doing well, so very directly, or about another Bitcoin person doing well. So it's, and that keeps fucking my mind. Like the utopia that's leading to in my head is just, am I going insane here? Is this true? Like, and I try to debunk it, but no, it is true, and I'm living it. I'm experiencing it. Every price falls for me because I denominate in Bitcoin. Like my house is worth fewer Bitcoins now than it were a couple of years ago. It's right here. The future is here already. It's just not evenly dispersed or distributed. Evenly distributed.
Yeah. But that's 100% correct. But it goes further than that, because it's not just the physical world; it's the mental impact.
Yes,
that it has. And when you're helping and supporting other people, and you feel that they are helping and supporting you because you're, however different you are, you speak different languages, every aspect of you is probably different from the other person, but then you have complete alignment on this one thing, which then just is the benefit. It brings the benefit to everybody. It just changes the way of thinking, like your outlook, your positivity. I don't know. I imagine you are a far more positive person now than you perhaps were 10 years ago.
Absolutely. I was always a positive person, I guess, at least outwards. But before Bitcoin, I was a thinking man too. So I was a bit of a cynic when I saw how the world was like going to shit because of stupidity.
Yeah.
But then, like going down the Austrian economics rabbit hole has made me love other people more. Like, and that's not an exaggeration. I appreciate the the lady at the supermarket and the Glovo guy like a lot more, because I realize that people doing tasks for one another helps everyone. And when we're on a Bitcoin standard, we have 8 billion people working for 8 billion people. Like it's mind blowing.
It is, but to come back to it, the impact that we as a community can drive is vastly underestimated.
Yeah,
right? And I don't feel like we talk about decentralized alignment enough. It sort of happens because we want to support other things, but it's like a superpower that we haven't fully unlocked yet. And the more time that passes, the more this superpower just grows. And you can start to see it even just within politics.
Yeah.
For example, in the US elections, like, coming out as pro Bitcoin made a meaningful difference, or pro digital assets made a meaningful difference. But that's just one big example of this. But as we build more and more Bitcoin companies, for example, then Bitcoin is just a competitive advantage for everybody that adopts it.
Yes.
And so, when you're talking about the end game of 8 billion people in service of 8 billion people, and I could also listen to Jeff Booth talk about these things all day long. But it's we're all. It is the world's first global free market. We're all operating in our own self-interest for the benefit of everybody else. But it's at this stage, it is a competitive advantage.
Yeah.
For everybody, whether you're an individual or whether you're a company or whether you're a country. And that competitive advantage is going to disappear.
Yeah.
In the future, because when you get to 8 billion people on this thing, no one has that advantage anymore. Right?
No.
They may be benefiting from having it in the past, but they no longer have it.
No.
Whereas, we're at this sweet spot now, or approaching the sweet spot, where I think everybody should be thinking about, how do I leverage Bitcoin as my competitive advantage in a fiat world? And, that manifests itself in a number of ways. And, from a personal perspective, the competitive advantage is improving the way that you think about the world, improving the quality of your decision making, living a happier life, for examples that you just talked about. But then, when you think about how that extends to your work life, it's, each of us is in a fairly unique position.
Yeah.
Even though there's a few of us now, in that, your background is very different from my background, is very different from the next Bitcoiner's background. But there's lots of yous and there's lots of me's in the world, but just most of them are on the fiat side of the fence.
Yeah.
There's not many on the Bitcoin side of the fence. And so, what can each of us do individually to drive positive outcomes from ourselves by leveraging Bitcoin against the rest of the world? Factoring it into how we incorporate it into our business. How do we help it to improve our decision making? How do we do all manner of things? But it's going to be, I think, one of the biggest drivers of hyper Bitcoinization. And I just don't think we necessarily talk about it enough, because there are lots of ways to do it, but we're just sort of figuring out those tools ourselves.
Yeah.
People when you talk about businesses, you put it on the balance sheet and these sorts of things, but it's still, even on the balance sheet, it's a savings mechanism. It's not, it has second order impacts on the business and the way the business thinks about itself, and then decision making, etc., but it's not necessarily outwardly driving, your customers to think more about Bitcoin. Or there are missing pieces that still need to come, but once these things slot into place, it is going to go gradually, then suddenly. And there are things that everybody can be doing every day, even simple things like every time you pay for something, just say, "Can I pay in Bitcoin?"
Yeah, or can I tip you in Bitcoin?
That's
usually even more effective.
Yeah. Just if every one of us did that every day, every time we paid for anything, be amazed at the amount of penetration we would think.
Yeah,
it's costless. This is costless for us.
Yeah, and and at the end of the day, the companies keeping Bitcoin in the balance sheet, on their balance sheets, and nation states accumulating all of that. At the end of the day, the actual ability to move those hard Bitcoins, not the paper Bitcoins, but the actual Bitcoins, is a secret someone or a group of people is keeping from other people.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, a state cannot own Bitcoin, because a state is also something in people's heads. It does not exist. It's something we made up, and it's just that Bitcoin is harder to make up, if you know what I mean. It's harder to remove from people's minds. Why, once it's in there, it doesn't go away, because you see. But the notion of the state being or corporations or whatever, these other fictitious things that we have come up with as a species, those are easier to debunk and say that these ideas are flawed. Science would not have come up with them again should we be extinct, at the Ricky back to the Ricky Gervais thing. But odds are high that we would have come up with something akin to Bitcoin, maybe a different block time and block size and those things, but coming up with a way in which we incentivize everyone to help everyone else. Like that, there's a likelihood that we would have come up with that at some point, because it is scientific in that way. But it also touches like discovery or invention. You get into all these philosophical dilemmas with it, right? But just that notion, like when you really think about it, though, it's super simple. Like if everyone knew that just being your best self to everyone else at all times was better than any other alternative, everyone would be better off. Of course they would. Like it's super simple.
Yeah.
And that's what it's all about.
Yeah. Phrase like that, it is super simple, but it's similar to thinking about, go back to where we started the conversation around building up the foundations for something that you can rely upon.
Yeah.
In the same way you can't rely on Keynesian economics because the foundations aren't there. You can rely on Austrian economics because the foundations are there. It's very similar to that statement you've just made. Like everybody, maybe you'll agree that being nice or being positive is probably the best thing. But you can be sure of that when it's built on proper foundations, and the proper foundations is everything we've already talked about.
Yeah,
because when you can rely on an effective transmission mechanism between your input and your output, then you can have confidence about the level of control that you have in your own life. And if you're confident about the level of control you have in your own life, then you're on much firmer foundations to then take a positive stance and a positive set of interactions with everybody else.
That's a beautiful way of putting it.
Wobbly, then you're not going to feel necessarily like you're at your best, and take a positive outlook in your interactions with everybody else. And when everybody stood on firm foundations, it's to the benefit of everyone else. And so it's a much more positive world.
That's a beautiful way of putting it. The way I put the same thought in one of the books, I don't remember which, but it's about time preference, right? So if you're robbed of everything you have, so that you're naked and you don't have anything, then you have to adopt a high time preference. You have to feed yourself, you have to find shelter, you have to find clothes, and it's absolutely necessary for survival for you to find these things and acquire them as soon as possible. So your time preference becomes the lowest it can be, which means this is a state of fear, because you're afraid of everything. If you don't find shelter before the nightfall, you can freeze to death and stuff like that. If you don't find food, you starve to death. So it's a state of fear. High time preference is very connected to fear.
Yeah.
So when you have the opposite, when you have and this I think is why we're so confused as a race, as a species. I mean, because we've always had flawed money. So money is not doing what it's supposed to, which is be like the best insurance against the future. But its main purpose is to protect you from the future, if you will. So, which is adopting a low time preference. So if you have lots of assets and lots of bitcoins and whatever, then you can adopt the lowest time preference possible. And in a fiat system, that stack of stuff diminishes. So you need to be greedy and you need to be Gordon Gekko in order to get there in the first place and stuff. But on a Bitcoin standard, it's literally the opposite of this naked guy in the jungle high time preference scenario. So what's the opposite of fear? And I'd say it's love. Love is the opposite of fear. So Bitcoin is love, literally.
And that is just a far more eloquent way of putting it than my ham-fisted attempt at trying to convey the same thing. But
no,
But yeah, absolutely. And I came across, I was pointed in the direction of an article, and I perhaps you haven't come across this guy called Peter England.
Mm-hmm.
And he's written a Substack, and the reason it came across my inbox is that he'd written about an island, Knut, and he considered how it would impact the people on the island if they thought they were going to get rescued versus not getting rescued, and thinking about whether you're ultimately playing a single game or multiple games, and then, like, in the context of a game show, because if you never expect to get rescued, then if you do expect to get rescued, or there's some sort of elimination event or something like on a game show, your natural inclination is at some point to stab someone in the back, right? Because you will do it at the optimum point to maximize your chances of staying and maximize their chances of getting booted off, right? Whereas if you know there's never going to be an end to the game, then you're never incentivized to do that, and your alignment with everybody else is on firm moral foundations, and you take a collaborative approach by default in the long run. And he wrote a really interesting article about the two, but it's effectively like fiat versus Bitcoin. And I think you'll enjoy reading it. Yeah,
my mind is blown now for a very specific reason, and that is that you just like put other words to it, but this is the first chapter of Bitcoin, the Inverse of Clown World. Because
I'm sorry, I'm showing myself up for having not read it. I'm sorry.
We describe the prisoner's dilemma game,
okay.
And so when you play the prisoner's dilemma game once, the winning strategy is to cheat and to backstab the other guy. I'm not gonna explain the entire experiment, but it basically says the same thing. But if you play it an unlimited amount of times, there was actually a mathematics competition to find a solution to what's the optimal strategy if we play it over and over again.
Yeah,
and the tournament was conducted by a mathematician called Robert Axelrod, which is a fantastic name for a mathematician, in my opinion. And the winning strategy was something called tit for tat.
Yeah.
Which means that you are incentivized to just help, be your best, be a Bitcoiner, and help the other guy until you get backstabbed, and then the tat comes in. Then you're allowed to backstab him once. So appropriate retaliation is also in there.
Yeah.
Justice. I interpret that as justice, like eye for an eye type justice, the Rothbardian ethics.
Yeah.
So that is mathematically the winning strategy when you're in a prisoner's dilemma type game. And isn't that fascinating? Because it means that sure, when there's chaos around, high time preference and instinct can be very good. Like kill the other animal and take the food. But if you're building civilizations and long-term generational stuff, I mean, just be good to one another. You all win. This is what civilization is.
Yeah, it's very good, and you see that in global diplomacy as well. I mean, that sort of approach goes across everything. The tit for tat strategy. But it's impossible to achieve in a fiat world because you're constantly getting stolen from.
Yeah,
your baseline is the tat. I don't know. Is that the default is a negative outcome?
No. And if you think about that, like how far we've gotten as a species with despite our money being flawed and poisoned for 5,000 years, because even gold was poisoned by inflation. Like, so, and especially receipts for gold, which is where fiat starts, right? So like we've had this for the longest time, and every history book, everything in human history is colored by the by toxic money and a poison in our veins, like that has been there forever, and it's just now that we can remedy ourselves from it and cleanse ourselves of this poison.
Well, that's right, but the way I'd think about history is like an accordion. It's like, yeah, and we can see this today. Like, we have tremendous amount of research and development into, a whole range of things. Right? The quality of that research and development is mixed, because a lot of stuff that shouldn't get funded gets funded.
Yeah.
But it will get funded, it will die, and it will destroy capital. But the stuff that does get funded, we can go on and make a meaningful difference to our lives. Right? But then if you do that, and then you take the accordion out too far, then it starts to tear, right? And they have to reset it. And there is inevitable, collateral damage of that process, but you don't necessarily lose the technological advancements that you gained during the last cycle, but it's extremely traumatic.
And it sounds horrible.
Restart over and over again with a new accordion, right? Because you ultimately know it's going to tear, but you're going to make some nice music before it tears, and then you've got to start again. But it means you make potentially huge leaps forward, but there's a massive, massive cost for that.
Yeah.
Whereas Bitcoin allows us to move to a basis where the accordion never tears.
Yeah.
Right. And you carry on playing beautiful music forever, because instead of pulling it too far, you just play it like normal. And you still have, times when things are better and things are worse, or you make more progress or less progress in a period of time. Yep. But in the long run, you make magnitudes more progress, because you avoid the traumatic periods.
Yes,
you avoid the downtime of having to build a new accordion.
No, so you can invent the radar without there having to be a war in order for you to invent it.
And it's the compound benefit of improved decision making.
Yeah,
because you think about the fiat world today, like, we spray so much capital all over the place, and so much of it gets destroyed.
Yeah, wasted.
Counterproductive, because the price of money is distorted. The cost of money is false, and therefore all your capital allocation decision makings, it's like trying to clearly see a picture through a misty window.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, sometimes you'll guess correctly what it is on the other side. But a lot of time you'll get it totally wrong, and you'll lose your money.
Which is where Bitcoin is the radar, like, because it can actually,
yeah. But if you instead you've got clear glass, you avoid those obvious mistakes.
Yeah,
the compound benefit of doing that over and over and over again means that your quality of outcome is just so much higher, and the magnitude of the outcome is just so much bigger.
Yeah.
But again, it's, that clashes with the Keynesian view of the world, where they would say, well, you'll be deploying less capital, and therefore it's less good for growth.
That's so retarded. Yeah.
But again, it's the compounding benefit of this thing. It's like, do I want to spend a load of money 50% well, or do I want to spend less money 100% well and do that over and over forever? I know which one I want.
Yeah.
And it's easier to think about that when you have a long-term time preference.
Yeah, and the wasteful one is like, it's also just borrowing from our children, and it's very destructive in the long run. The Keynesianism just doesn't work. Yeah. And that this is why people don't understand capitalism, because I think that's why people don't understand capitalism, is because the money is broken, because they think it's something else than what it actually is or should be. Because the prices are signals. They're a communication system first and foremost. And this is like even Mises pointed this out about socialism. Everyone thinks it's an incentive problem, but if you have a gun to your head and the Stalin tells you to grow your crops and give them to the state, then you will do that, because otherwise they kill you. So you have the incentive. It's not an incentive problem, it's a price signal problem, because no one knows what to produce and where. So that's why you end up with empty supermarkets and stuff, and people starve. So, and this is the entire thing. It's taking away the distortion, as you say, cleaning the window. That's what it is.
Absolutely, and it comes earlier in the chain of critical thinking.
Yeah.
Before the gun goes to their head, and you see this in the video with like Fiatello. When he prints these extra Fiatellos, they start distorting the price signals in some parts of the economy, and therefore it starts to undermine the productivity, which is very clear. Like, everybody can watch that and be like, well, yeah, that's obviously true. That's obviously true.
This just came up in my head. Like, Keynesianism is a bit like if humanity is fish in an aquarium, Keynesianism is someone pouring in too much food into the aquarium, so the water gets all muddy and you can't see anything. And also, people die from obesity. The fish die from obesity instead. When if you would have clear water, the fish would sooner or later evolve and crawl out of the aquarium and do something useful with their lives.
Yeah, but I guess that works. I guess
it's a bit far fetched.
It's a bit of a stretch. It's a bit of a stretch. I'm sure we can make it work.
Yeah, Joe. I'm running out of time here, unfortunately. I would love to do this for hours on end, but
same.
I have a family that's waiting for me back there. So
go and do what you need to do.
Is there anywhere you want to send people on the internet? Like, where can they follow your stuff? Like, you're going to do more stuff in the future, I'm sure. And where can they find the video? If you repeat that again, I mean, no, you said it before, but where do you want to send them?
So the best place is to just connect with me on X. So I'm at SatmoJoe. So SatMoJoe. And the video is on YouTube under the handle Sats versus Fiat. At Sats versus Fiat. It's the same handle on X, and it's also on Instagram now. We put it there just to see if anybody watches it, rather than trying to drive any eyeballs to it at this stage. But yeah, please just get in touch and join the community on X as well, which is the Sats versus Fiat community. And please help yourself to the materials. Talk to your friends and families about it. Share the video, share the materials, do whatever you want. Let's just try and get as many people as possible to get educated.
All of that is true for my stuff as well. Just copy pasta everything you want. Like, so if you can also just Google what is the problem, and this is literally the first thing that comes up, I think. At least on YouTube.
I'd say what's the problem, and then probably Bitcoin.
Yeah, what's the problem?
Or Joe Bryan, because what's the problem is pretty generic, and it's hard to.
It's pretty generic, but
that's been there for years.
I searched for it on YouTube, and it's literally the first video that came up.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
Yep, it is. So right now it is. That might not always be true, but anyway, Joe, it's been a fantastic pleasure to talk to you today, and I hope to see you at one of the conferences. Are you planning on going to any conference this year?
Yeah, so I'll be at Bedford, and I'll be in Prague.
All right. See you there then.
If you're there, yeah. Okay, excellent.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you very much for having me on, Knut, and thanks to everyone at home for listening and all the support.
Yeah, thank you, Joe. Keep rocking. This has been the Bitcoin Infinity Show. Thanks for listening.